You guys still doing good?
Yeah.
All right, awesome. So we've had a pretty significant success at Quantcast. We've been on a lot of industry news over the past, it's only been 2 months since May. And that's like the marketing story, right? That's like the cleaned up version. So what I wanted to do is kind of give you guys the story behind the story. And that's really the interesting part. And also because I'm like super proud of my team. Because they like seriously kicked ass with a really, really complicated problem. We're going to talk about GDPR. All right, raise your hand if you've heard GDPR. Excellent. That makes my job easier. Cool. So, and I hope you really paid attention as well through the first presentation, because it gave you a really nice, clean overview of what the ad tech sort of industry looks like, so you kind of know the area that we're going to have to play with. So, what is GDPR? I'll give you the short version. So it is the General Data Protection Regulation. I have other words that I plug in for those letters occasionally, but that works. So anyway, this is a law that was passed by EU regulators a couple of years ago. It went into effect on May 25th of this year, which was an incredibly fun day for me. It's actually an addition to a previous law called the E-Privacy Directive that was passed a number of years ago. And basically, altogether, what it does is it says that companies who access users' devices, and they set cookies, and they collect data on individuals, and they process that data, they have to have consent from users to be able to do that. So when E-Privacy Directive was passed, there was no sort of like definition of what does that consent mean, right? Like what do we actually have to do? So it was open to interpretation. So all across Europe, you see all of these banners that pop up on everybody's sites that say things like, if you continue navigating the site, and often they're like really tiny, like down in the corner. If you continue navigating the site, that means you consent to us using your data for any reason that we want, and we're not going to tell you why or how. And by the way, your firstborn is ours too. So what GDPR did when they realized what was happening, it actually said, okay guys, right, all right, so first, here's some rules around what consent means. It has to be unambiguous. You actually have to have somebody like click and take an action that says yes or no, I consent. So everybody in ad tech, which is about anybody on the web, sets cookies. Everybody does some level of tracking. You go to a website now, everybody's got the browser plugins that show you just how many cookies are being set. We're being tracked a lot, right? So if you can imagine, if every single one of those companies individually had to ask a user if they consented or not, now when you go to a website, you've got 50 pop-ups happening in front of you asking for your individual consent. So that wasn't going to work. And we knew that disruption was going to be inevitable. But this is tied to revenue. So disruption is not an option, right? But neither is business as usual. We have to respect consumer privacy, right? We're all consumers. We value our data. We value our privacy. And it's important that the companies we work for and the companies that we work with do that as well. So we set out on a project to deal with how we were going to deal with GDPR, because we have significant business in the EU, and it was important to us, being a privacy-first company to begin with, but to also address this and stay up to date with the compliance. So we have been working with the IAB Europe, Interactive Advertising Bureau, yeah, whatever, anyway, IAB Europe. They had this working group going for a number of years. It started out mostly with the lawyers talking, right, and trying to debate and understand and figure out what their thoughts were on it. And we kept getting closer and closer down to the wire of May 25th. And then, last minute they pull the engineers in and they're like, hey guys, we need a technical solution for this. You've got 3 months, go. So, yeah, so that was mildly entertaining. So we knew that we needed a solution. That's the solution to every problem. So what we did was we Quantcast made a bet on an industry solution. This was the only way that we were going to be able to prevent major fragmentation in the marketplace, and still, as an ecosystem, be able to work together and at the same time, not just be compliant with the law, but actually really respect consumer privacy. and listen to what their preferences were and actually honor those signals. So a number of companies worked together, a lot of competitors. So not only were we trying to solve a common problem that we all had, but everybody was coming to the table with their own agenda. So it was a lot like herding cats. So when I got pulled into these conversations, I'm a little blunt. I have a little problem with patience sometimes. So I went through 2 of these calls, actually 3. They were happening weekly, same set of people, and we just talked about the same thing every single week over and over again and never made any progress. We had 4 potential solutions that had been proposed, and we were basically debating like my most ridiculous minutia of each one and trying to figure out which one we were going to do. Everybody got impatient. We're like, okay, fine, this Friday, we're going to put it to a vote. And I'm like, no, none of these work, right? They're all awful for some reason. So I went back to my team, and which Brittany was on our team, and pulled everybody together and was like, okay, here's the situation. And I explained everything, pulled our chief privacy officer in so she could answer the legal questions because I don't have a legal degree. And we basically had 3 days to come up with a better solution than what had already been proposed. And then bring that back to the group, and hopefully they buy the idea, and then we go from there. So this is a team. So we had chief privacy officer. We had one incredibly busy designer, because they always are. We had an engineering lead who also had 4 other teams that he was having to manage at the time. And then we had 4 engineers who also had other work that they were responsible for, and none of them had a legal degree, but had to still be able to understand and operate on that level. So we had, well, the first day it was me talking, so really 3 days, but 4 days to get until a group vote was going to happen on this proposed solution. We had one moment of inspiration where one of our chief engineers who we had talked to about the problem was out jogging one day and just had this moment of inspiration and came back in. He's like, I got an idea. So we pulled everybody together. We had 3 days to figure this thing out, and then an hour to present the idea and basically change the future of everyone in this working group. So the way we approach this, and these are kind of the things that I think were what really drove our success, other than the fact that we had an incredible team of just super, super smart people. So we went consumer first. The problem with the working group is they were so tied up in their own agendas and figuring out what they needed to, what they wanted. They were forgetting that it is all about consumer privacy, and that was what we had to solve first. So we did that. Realized none of them were doing discovery and talking to consumers or even talking to very many publishers. So I very quickly went out, picked up the phone, started calling people, getting input, and kind of came up with a framework of what was being asked for. We added the context of that, so we all got a crash course in the law and what our interpretation of it was. And then we understood the unique sort of positions of the other companies, because they're stakeholders, we've got to convince them, right? And then we prototyped this thing in just a number of days, just so that we could have a proof of concept. Because talking about something and the architecture of something is not quite as valuable and strong as actually showing someone that this will work. So that's what we did. We presented to the team, and it was like dead silence. And then the leader of the group said, do you guys want to vote? Like, sure. And then we all voted, and ours won by a landslide. I think we had one person who voted against it, the dude from the Daily Mail. So what we created was this industry-wide standard, and which allows all of this ecosystem to talk to each other in the same language. It's open source, which is something that we absolutely demanded because we didn't want to get into arguments over who owned what IP. It was publisher-centric, and it was consumer-centric. So the outcome. So today, 2 months since a little over 2 months since the 25th, we have a new industry, right? Consent management platforms. This is this whole new thing. We've got 113 that have launched on the IAB framework, which is what we ended up calling this thing. We've got 400 registered vendors and growing every single day who are a part of this framework and talking to each other and sharing consent. 19% of the top 10,000 US and UK sites now have an IAB compliant solution in place on their site. 45.3% of the tools, actually they have some sort of CMP in place. 45% of those are IAB compliant, and Quantcast has 69% market share of all of those consent solutions in market. That's it.